Hubble went into orbit in 1990, and so I think a lot of people don't appreciate how far back in time its history really extends. The germ of the idea that took root and became Hubble was written up in 1946. So, World War II has barely ended. It's 9 years until Sputnik. The space age doesn't exist yet. And yet an astronomer named Lyman Spitzer described the potential of a telescope, a large telescope, a large mirror, so it could really see dim stars and see very far away, and above the atmosphere. So it's not blocked by clouds. Its view is not disturbed by turbulence in the atmosphere. And our atmosphere is a blanket. It's opaque to ultraviolet radiation. So you might as well be standing behind a wall. Ultraviolet cannot get through to a telescope on a mountaintop. And yet the ultraviolet characteristics of stars and galaxies are important to astronomers. So the idea emerges in 1946. The space age has to get started, which happens, of course, in 57 with Sputnik. By the mid-60s, astronomers start to get convinced that this big telescope in space idea might be worth doing. And what were the reasons for that? Because it's going to be expensive. You could probably fund a couple hundred astronomers to do each their own thing for what it will cost you to build this telescope.
Right.
Rockets are new. A lot of them still blow up. So do you really want to take the risk of putting your expensive, fragile instrument on this bomb and counting on it getting to space instead of being blown to smithereens? All that learning and confidence had to be gone through. What really turned the corner on this idea was stop thinking about Hubble as a telescope like one person's going to use, and rethink it in the same way that you think about an observatory on a mountaintop. So an observatory on a mountaintop, you build some infrastructure, you put a mirror and a truss there and a dome over it, and many astronomers over many decades use that telescope. You can swap the instruments out, you can fix something, you keep it going, you keep the instrument itself going. If your electronics technology improves, you can strip out the old stuff and put new electronics in, you can put in new instruments, and so on and so forth. And that became the concept for Hubble. It's going to be an observatory. It will serve multiple users. You'll be able to swap instruments out. You'll be able to keep its core technology abreast of technological advance, so you won't get a technology lock-in. And, in 5 years, you'll have an ancient telescope that's hardly worth using anymore. Got to prevent that from happening and be able to change the instruments. So multi-user, multiple investigations, multiple lines of inquiry, and staying abreast of technology, all by dint of being able to maintain it in orbit and replace things in orbit. So from a scientific point of view, the clarity of seeing, the size of the mirror, the access to the ultraviolet were really big scientific drivers. And then the promise that we really will be able to keep this going for a long time. So the scientific return will be worth the investment.